to have you join me on Global News in Zuma, Nigeria. On the news, Zelensky tells United Nations that Russia must be compelled to seek peace. China test fires ICBM with dummy warhead into Pacific. Iran's president says Tehran seeks improved West ties. Hezbollah says senior leader killed during Israeli airstrikes, and Marcellus Williams executed in Missouri amid conviction doubts. Stay with me for these and more stories. Beginning with Russia-Ukraine war, Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukrainian president, has told the United Nations Security Council that discussions will not be sufficient to end the war in Ukraine and that Russia needs to be forced into peace. Zelensky told a high-level meeting of the 15-member council in New York that Russian President Vladimir Putin was committing an international crime and had broken so many international rules that he will not stop on his own. The Ukrainian leader is targeting to build support among Ukraine's allies for what he has called a victory plan to end the war that started when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. He emphasized that the war will not end because someone got tired of the war or through a trade with Putin, a reference to proposals that Ukraine cede some territory seized by Russia to end the conflict. Russia presently occupies less than 20% of Ukraine and is pressing forward on the eastern front line. The meeting was attended by ministers from 14 of the Council's member nations except Russia, which sent its permanent representative to the UN, Vasily Nebenzia. He complained that Zelensky was being given a United Nations spotlight again. Zelensky's visit to the United States comes as campaigning for a November presidential election that could reset Washington's ties with Kyiv moves into higher gear. Vice President Kamala Harris is facing off against former President Donald Trump, who is seen as more of a Ukraine skeptic. Opinion polls suggest a tight race between the two. The Ukrainian president also criticized North Korea and Iran for providing arms to Russia for the war, describing them as Moscow's de facto accomplices. Investigators have found debris from North Korean weaponry in Ukraine. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian has denied claims Tehran is delivering missiles to Russia. The issue of weapon supplies also triggered a clash between the top diplomats of China and the United States. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told the Council that North Korea and Iran are not only the ones aiding and abetting Russia. China, another member of this council, is the top provider of machine tools, microelectronics and other items that Russia is using to rebuild, to restock, to ramp up its war machine and sustain its brutal aggression. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi rejected the accusations, reiterating China's commitment to achieving peace in Ukraine and pointed to a peace proposal worked out with Brazil. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres also briefed the meeting, reiterating the United Nations' strong support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity under the United Nations Charter. China has said its test launched an intercontinental ballistic missile ICBM into the Pacific Ocean at 8:44 a.m. on Wednesday local time. The ICBM, carrying a dummy warhead, was launched by the People's Liberation Army PLA rocket force and fell into expected sea areas, the Chinese Ministry of Defense said in a statement, adding that the launch was a routine arrangement in an annual training plan and not directed at any country or target. It did not name the weapon tested, although one of its latest ICBMs is the DF-41, which was displayed during the celebrations to mark 70 years of the People's Republic of China in 2019 and has a range of between 12,000 and 15,000 kilometers, 7,400 to 9,320 miles. According to reports, the relevant countries have been informed in advance of the test. It did not elaborate on the path of the missile or where exactly it had fallen. The launch effectively tested the performance of weapons and equipment and the training level of the troops and achieved the expected goal, according to report. The PLA rocket force, which oversees the country's conventional and nuclear missiles, has been saddled with modernizing China's nuclear forces amid boosted United States missile defenses, better surveillance capabilities, and strengthened alliances. Washington last October said China was developing its nuclear arsenal more quickly than the U.S. had anticipated. China had over 500 operational nuclear warheads as of May 2023 and was likely to have more than 1,000 by 2030, it said. Now, Masoud Pezeshkian, Iranian president, told the United Nations General Assembly UNGA that he wants to open a constructive chapter in his country's international ties, that Tehran is ready to engage with West over its nuclear program. Pezeshkian also, in his first speech at the United Nations annual gathering of world leaders on Tuesday, strongly condemned Israel for what he called its genocide in Gaza and its atrocities, crimes against humanity, and desperate barbarism in its war on the Palestinian territory, as well as attacks on Lebanon. I am aimed to lay a strong foundation for my country's entry into a new era, positioning it to play an effective and constructive role in the evolving global order, Pezeshkian told the UNGA. We seek peace for all and have no intention of conflict with any country. Iran opposes war and emphasizes the need for an immediate cessation of military conflict in Ukraine, he said. We are ready to engage with participants of the 2015 nuclear deal. If the deal's commitments are implemented fully and in good faith, dialogue on other issues can follow, he added. Directly addressing the American people, Pezeshkian listed a number of Iranian grievances, including crippling sanctions placed on Iran by the United States and the 2020 killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in a U.S. drone strike during the era of former President Donald Trump. The U.S. under Trump abandoned the 2015 nuclear deal between Tehran and 6 world powers in 2018 and reinforced strong sanctions on Iran. Efforts since to revive the pact have failed. Speaking last week about the relationship between the U.S. and Israel at an event hosted by his campaign for the 2024 presidential election, Trump spoke about his record of supporting Israel during his presidency, including recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital and Israel's sovereignty over the occupied Golan Heights. Trump also said he had been told the best thing he had done for Israel was terminating the Iran nuclear deal, describing the 2015 agreement as the worst deal ever made for Israel. The Iranian leader's speech came as the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, Rafael Grossi, said that he sensed a greater willingness by Iranian officials to engage with the agency in a more meaningful way and that he hoped to travel to Tehran in October. Grossi held talks with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, one of the key architects of the 2015 accord that limited Iran's ability to enrich uranium in return for a lifting of Western sanctions on the sidelines of the UNGA on Tuesday. Lebanon's armed group Hezbollah has declared the death of one of its top commanders amid Israel's extreme bombardment of the country. Early on Wednesday, Hezbollah confirmed that Ibrahim Mohammed Qubaisi had been killed hours after the Israeli military said he had been eliminated in an airstrike on Goberi in Beirut's southern suburbs. Israeli officials said Qubaisi, also known as Hajj Abu Musa, led a number of Hezbollah's missile and rocket units and had been responsible for a 2,000 attack in which 3 Israeli soldiers were kidnapped and murdered. Lebanon's Ministry of Public Health said the Israeli raid had killed 6 people and wounded 15 others. Since Monday, Israeli attacks have killed at least 569 people and injured 1,835 others in Lebanon, according to Lebanese health authorities. The intensification of fighting across the Israeli-Lebanese border, which has seen low-level skirmishes since Israel launched its war on Gaza in October, followed last week's mass detonation of pagers and walkie-talkies aiming Hezbollah members in Lebanon. Hezbollah has launched hundreds of rockets into Israel in recent days, most of which have been intercepted by Israel's anti-missile defenses. On Tuesday, the Lebanese group fired nearly 300 rockets towards Israel, injuring 6 civilians and soldiers, according to the Israeli military. Israel's bombing campaign has forced thousands of people to flee southern Lebanon and raised fears of new all-out conflict in the Middle East, just as Israel's war in Gaza is approaching a 1-year mark. The United Nations Security Council is planned to meet on Wednesday to deliberate the growing conflict. On Tuesday, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres cautioned that Lebanon was at the brink, urging world leaders not to let Lebanon to become another Gaza. Moving now to judicial matters, Marcellus Williams, who was convicted of murder 21 years ago, has been executed in the western state of Missouri in spite of concerns raised over the integrity of the case. The United States Supreme Court, the last body that could have overturned Williams' death sentence, refused to intervene in the case on Tuesday. According to the Innocent Project, the 55-year-old was executed by lethal injection shortly after 6 p.m. local time at a prison in Bontury, whose lawyer worked with Williams. His death came a day after both Missouri Governor Mike Parson and the state's highest court also rejected his last days appeals to avoid execution. Williams was found guilty in the 1998 killing of Alicia Gale, a 42-year-old former newspaper reporter who was stabbed 43 times during what appeared to be a burglary gone wrong. He had maintained he was innocent. Wesley Bell, whose office handled the original prosecution, had sought to block the execution due to concerns about the original trial. Bell said in a statement before the execution, even for those who disagree on the death penalty, when there is a shadow of a doubt of any defendant's guilt, the irreversible punishment of execution should not be an option. In court papers, Bell probed the reliability of the two major trial witnesses, concluded that prosecutors improperly excluded black jurors on the basis of race, and noted that new testing found no trace of Williams' DNA on the murder weapon. Williams was African American. Subsequent tests also showed that there was DNA on the knife from a prosecutor and an investigator who worked on the case and handled the weapon without gloves. The contamination of the knife led prosecutors and Williams' lawyers to an agreement in August to commute the sentence to life in prison. Gale's family also backed the deal, but Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey objected and the state Supreme Court blocked it at his request. A state judge upheld Williams' murder conviction earlier this month, finding that the lack of evidence on the knife was not enough to establish his innocence. On Monday, the Missouri Supreme Court affirmed that decision. Governor Parson, a Republican, also turned down Williams' request for clemency the same day. Williams was among death row inmates in 5 states who were scheduled to be executed in the span of a week, an unusually high number amid a years-long decline in the use and support of the death penalty in the United States. The first was carried out on Friday in South Carolina. Texas was also slated to execute a prisoner on Tuesday evening. Travis Mullis, 38, was convicted of stamping his 3-month-old son, Elijah Mullis, to death in 2008. The death penalty has been abolished in 23 U.S. states, while 6 others, Arizona, California, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee, have moratoriums in place. Still on judicial matters, U.S. charges Trump gunman suspect with attempted murder. Ryan Routh, the man accused of staking out ex-United States President Donald Trump's Florida golf course with a rifle, has been indicted of attempted assassination of a political candidate. Routh, 58, was already facing 2 gun-connected charges after he was found pointing a rifle through a fence at a Wells Palm Beach golf course in Florida while the Republican presidential candidate was playing around. Attorney General Merrick Garland said in a statement, the Justice Department would not tolerate violence that strikes at the heart of our democracy, and we will find and hold accountable those who perpetrate it. This must stop. Routh has been held in custody ahead of his trial. The attempted assassination charges carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. Court documents showed that the case had been assigned to Judge Arlene Cannon, a Trump appointee who in July dismissed a criminal case accusing Trump of illegally keeping classified documents after leaving office. The suspect has not yet entered a plea. His lawyers unsuccessfully sought to have him released on bond. Prosecutors have in recent days showed evidence that he said pointed towards a plan to kill Trump. They alleged that months before the incident, Routh dropped off a note to an unidentified person which appeared to have been premised on the idea that the assassination attempt will be unsuccessful. The note referred to his actions as a failed assassination attempt on Donald Trump and offered $150,000 US for anyone who could finish the job. According to court findings, they said Routh spent a month in South Florida and mobile phone data showed him near the golf course and Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. He was found with a handwritten list of dates and venues where Trump had spoken and was expected to appear in August, September, and October. A U.S. Secret Service agent searching the golf course ahead of Trump opened fire after spotting the partially obscured face of a man and the gun poking through the fence. Prosecutors said the agent fired at Routh, who fled. He was arrested within an hour on a Florida highway. The apprehension came 2 months after Trump was shot and injured in the ear in an assassination attempt during a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. The Secret Service has acknowledged failings leading up to that shooting, but has said the security worked as it should have to thwart a potential attack in Florida. Still on more stories, and Biden says U.S. must stay engaged as Mid-East nears all-out war. President Joe Biden declared the U.S. must not withdraw from the world as he delivered his final address to the United Nations General Assembly on Tuesday, as Israel and Hezbollah militants in Lebanon fringed toward all-out war and Israel's bloody operation against Hamas in Gaza approached one-year mark. On Monday, the Pentagon declared that it was sending a small number of additional U.S. troops to the Middle East to supplement the roughly 40,000 already in the region. All the while, the White House insists Israel and Hezbollah still have time to back and de-escalate. Biden had a hopeful outlook for the Middle East when he addressed the United Nations just a year ago. In that speech, Biden spoke of a sustainable, integrated Middle East coming into view. At the time, economic ties between Israel and some of its Arab neighbors were improving with implementation of the Abraham Accords that Israel signed with Bahrain, Morocco, and the United Arab Emirates (UAE) during the Trump administration. Biden's team helped resolve a long-running Israel-Lebanon maritime clash that had held back gas exploration in the region. And Israel-Saudi normalization talks were progressing, a game-changing alignment for the region if a deal could be landed. 18 days later, Biden's Middle East hopes came crashing down. Hamas militants stormed into Israel, killing 1,200, taking some 250 hostage, and prompting a bloody war that has killed over 41,000 Palestinians in Gaza and led the region into a complicated downward spiral. Now the conflict is threatening to metastasize into a multi-front war and leave a lasting scar on Biden's presidential legacy. On Tuesday, Israel and Hezbollah traded strikes again as the death toll from a massive Israeli bombardment reached to almost 560 people and thousands fled from southern Lebanon. It's the deadliest barrage since 2006 Israel-Hezbollah war. Israel has urged residents of southern Lebanon to evacuate from homes and other buildings where it claimed Hezbollah has stored weapons, saying the military will conduct extensive strikes against the militant group. Still on Israel and Hezbollah war, Ramaphosa urges global leaders to end Palestinian suffering. South Africa has urged for a peaceful resolution in the ongoing Gaza war. Ramaphosa, speaking at the United Nations General Assembly on Tuesday, called upon the world leaders to take decisive action to end Palestinian suffering. Since October last year, Israel has continued its invasion in Palestinian territory, killing at least 41,000 people, including women and children, according to the Palestinian authorities. Some nations like Turkey have called upon the UN to place sanctions on Israel. Meanwhile, Lebanese health authorities on Tuesday raised the death toll from 2 days of Israeli airstrikes targeting Hezbollah militants to 564. Palestinian officials in Gaza, meanwhile, said new Israeli strikes killed at least 24 people. Israel's military says it will do whatever is necessary to push Hezbollah away from Lebanon's border with Israel. Israel and Hezbollah have been trading fire since the Israel-Hamas war began. On Monday, Israel launched hundreds of airstrikes in southern and eastern Lebanon, killing closely 500 people and injuring over 1,600 others. Thousands of people fled southern Lebanon, jamming the major highway to Beirut in the biggest exodus since the 2006 Israel-Hezbollah war. It's a staggering toll for a country still reeling from a deadly attack on communication devices the week before. Lebanon blamed the attacks on Israel, but Israel did not confirm or deny its responsibility. Hezbollah again launched some 100 projectiles toward Israel on Tuesday, the Israeli military had said. We take a quick break, and while we come back, more stories, particularly from Nigeria. Please don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Now we continue with Nigerian stories. CBN hikes interest rate to 27.25%. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has announced another addition in its monetary policy rate, MPR, raising it to 27.25%. On Tuesday, during the Monetary Policy Committee MPC meeting chaired by CBN Governor Yemi Cardoso, the decision was taken. Cardoso noted that the measure will help boost confidence, which will enable economic agents to plan in the medium to long term, adding that the MPC was worried about the fiscal deficits. However, he said the federal government has promised not to resort to ways and means for monetary financing. Also, Cardoso praised the federal government for the effort put into stabilizing food prices. He said the committee expressed optimism that the lifting of refined petroleum products from Dangote Petroleum Refinery will moderate transportation costs and significantly support the easing of food price pressures in the short to medium term. Remember that in July 2024, the CBN raised its monetary policy rate MPR by 800 basis points to 26.75%, up from 13% in May 2022. And finally, on the news, Dangote urges complete removal of fuel subsidy. The president of Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, has urged the federal government to put a lasting stop to fuel subsidies in the country. He stated this on Monday, according to report, stating that the time is right to end subsidies which have swallowed trillions of naira from Nigeria's economy. He said the removal will aid determine the actual petrol consumption in the country, as he confirmed ownership of 2 oil blocks in the upstream sector with an expected production date of next month. Dangote's statement came after the recent commencement of petrol lifting from the Dangote refinery and price increment to 950 naira per litre in Lagos State and its environs, and above 1,000 naira in the northern part of the country. The Nigeria had imported all petrol consumed in the country before the Dangote refinery came in stream. President Bola Tinubu removed the subsidy when he took office in May 2023, a step that shook up the inflation rate around 34% in 2024 before decreasing to about 32.15% in August. Food inflation remains high at about 40%. Another step to ending subsidy was taken in early September when the gasoline cap was eased, though the price remains below the market level. The naira has lost around 70% of its value against the dollar since rules that pegged the currency at an artificially high level were relaxed last year. Dangote also revealed the details of the pricing disagreement that happened with the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL. He said the NNPC bought its present stock from the refinery at a cheaper price than its imported fuel, but gave a minimum price for all products. A recap of major stories says Zelensky tells United Nations that Russia must be compelled to seek peace. China tests fires ICBM with dummy warhead into Pacific. Iran's president says Tehran seeks improved West ties. Hezbollah says senior leader killed during Israeli strikes, and Marcellus Williams executed in Missouri amid conviction doubt. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.